My mom has Munchausen by proxy. My mom convinced doctors that I had bipolar disorder, even though I never had any symptoms. I was on all of these medications. Lithium was one of those medications. Gained 60 or 70 pounds as a little kid. So I was 200 pounds. I remember literally packing trash bags of things. I didn't even care. I was just like, I need to leave here. My mom said to me that she hated me. That will mess with you. All you want naturally is to be loved by your parents. That is how we are wired. We want that acceptance. I love you no matter what. My stepmom really didn't want me present. My 16th birthday, she had an argument with my dad over me. She came charging after me. I was trying to explain to my dad and she pushed me and he just caught me right in time. Unfortunately, it took that to be heard for the first time. I was pulling in $8 million myself alone. I went to Paris, put in my resignation on the flight back and was like, I'm ready to roll. I trusted so deeply. I ended up signing to $500,000 worth of loans that I didn't know what I was signing.
Question was, where the fuck is my money?
Where the fuck is my money? This was the first time I've ever failed at something. I was having a conversation with my son yesterday. I was like, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? And he paused. Well, everything has been really fixable. Oddly, I wouldn't change anything. It creates grit. It's very hard to knock you and I down. It's actually impossible. It's impossible.
Imagine surviving a childhood that seemed designed to break you and walking out the other side as a 22-year-old closing multi-million-dollar deals on your way to building an industry-leading company of your own. Today, we welcome Persephone Maglaya, CEO of Media Socialites. Persephone built an anonymous social media account past 200,000 followers while an entire industry wondered who was behind it. She then turned that into an agency now trusted by Rosewood, Ritz-Carlton, Kleinfeld, and some of the most exclusive names in luxury hospitality. She's a Scorpio who learned everything the hard way, hardened early in life, and then had to teach herself how to soften. But the polished version you see today was forged in something far darker, a story of survival, betrayal, and the kind of grit most people never have to find. In just a moment, you're going to hear it in her own words. I'd ask you to listen closely, because what she's lived through is hard to believe, and what she's built in spite of it is even harder to ignore. She likes to say, build the parachute after you jump. Here's Persephone Maglaya. But before we start, we'd be very grateful if you'd like, subscribe, and share our episodes, as we're here to help as many people as possible via No Surrender Stories, and we'll get there much faster with your continued support. This is No Surrender. Thank you. This episode is brought to you by our partners over at Don't Trade It In. It's the best and fastest way to get top dollar for your car from the comfort of your home. Please visit don'ttradeitin.com today. We are delighted today to have Persephone on the show. She's got an incredible no surrender story. And like we have in a couple of other episodes, we're going to kind of, instead of starting in the beginning, we're going to start more present day and kind of skip around and talk about your childhood and stuff like that later. Okay. So if you could just tell me a bit about how you got from... You have like 209,000 followers, and obviously you started at zero. You own a company that you're the CEO of, or co-own it, and
still the CEO.
Yeah.
With my husband. Yeah.
So if we could kick it off with you telling us a little bit about where you are now and how you got there with your current company.
Amazing. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and we'll go all over the place, but let's start from that point. So I was working for Wedding Wear and the Knot for 10 years as the VP of partnerships. And I am like the Scorpio of all Scorpios. If I don't see something being done properly, I like to learn how to do it, become a practitioner, and then execute. And Gary Vee was exceptionally large at the time. I don't know if you listen to Gary Vee, of course, right?
Yeah.
And he at the time was giving very tangible bits of information on how to do this, and you'll get that. If you practice this strategy, it will work for you. And transparently, that's exactly what I did. I started from zero and I started posting 3 times a day. It was when anonymous accounts were really, really big at the time. And so I was posting bridal content 3 times a day for 5 years consistently. And it exploded during that time. And no one knew that it was me until they did. And that pissed off my employer. And I had already decided to use that as kind of a jumping off point because I knew that the influencer space was going to become a thing, but I knew I didn't want to be an influencer because I'm like, what if I don't feel like getting on camera one day? Like, what if I'm having a bad year, which we'll talk about,
Yeah.
or years, and you just don't want to show your face? Then what happens? And I feel that's a pressure and a stress that I just didn't want. But I knew that I could help people and practice in real time a strategy that I had figured out the algorithms on myself. So then I could take that and apply it on other people. So it was called Bridal Vogue. I've now flipped that to Be Persephone Says, but that was kind of like how I got here.
Very
And the
cool.
rest is history.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned Wedding Wire,
Mhm.
and I don't know if the listeners, viewers will
Mhm.
like really know what that is.
Yeah.
And if you could, I mean, you mentioned VP.
Mhm.
I know that you did very well there.
Crushed it there.
Can you, just,
Yeah.
yeah. If you could kind of tell for those who don't know what Wedding Wire is,
Mhm.
you were pretty much there right out of college. Is that correct?
College, like I was actually there in college and then got hired on. So yeah, Wedding Wire and The Knot are platforms for couples to find wedding professionals. And I was an intern there. And then I just kind of kept hustling my way. I wanted to be like the best intern ever so that I could, be the best community manager ever so that then I could be the best, whatever the next step was. And they hired me right out of college. And then my very good friend, everyone was very young at the time. Like everyone was very, very young. And just like hustle culture was the thing at the time as well. So I was listening to the sales team pitch and I was like, I can do that. I'm just going to sit here and listen to the pitch over and over and over again until I can say it as beautifully and succinctly as my friend could. And I listened to her pitch for 6 months straight, every lunch break. And then when a sales position came open, I stepped in. And then I was the top performer from a local perspective. So basically, if a couple was searching for a wedding venue locally, they would be able to see it was a pay to play model, basically, like old school Yelp. And then when they started opening up a national business, meaning like working with corporate companies essentially, they came to me. And my peers all said that was a horrible idea. But I knew at the time Wedding Wear and The Knot weren't merged. I knew what The Knot was making and what the women at The Knot were making, and they were annihilating it. I mean, there was one salesperson for an entire category. So I was like, let's do this. And I was making 10% commission on multi-million-dollar deals. And I was 22 years old. I was like, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to figure out media. I'm going to figure out social. And so I did.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It was sick, actually. It was
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned they figured out
Mhm.
that your anonymous page was you.
Yes.
Was that an abrupt break? You went from killing it to you're out today, like immediately, or?
Okay. Such a great question. I'm giggling because you'll appreciate this story. I liken this to when a kid is told, don't touch that flame, don't touch that flame. I knew I was on my way out. I knew that my business, because it was a side hustle, like the Media Socialites was a side hustle for me and it was growing and I was getting bigger. I started with $300 a month. Then it was, I think at that point, it was like $3,500 a month. And I had a couple clients paying that just myself. And so I was like, what if I could do this, not giving 10%, but giving 110%? And so I started to go to my existing Wedding Wire clients because I noticed how little they started caring about those relationships. And I could see the data and I'm like, look, I'm doing this. Like, I'm going to be leaving at some point. And I want you to know that I will be over here when you are ready. And so that's what I'm saying. I was like really like playing with fire. And so they approached me and they're like, guess what, Persephone, congratulations. We're going to increase your salary because I had, especially for what I was doing, pretty low salary. All things considered, I was making my money in commission. And like, we're going to increase your salary and we're going to decrease your commission from 10% to 3%. And I was like, I am a numbers person and that is not happening. They're like, also, you need to shut down your pages And so I went to Paris with Eddie for 72 hours that following weekend abruptly and was like, we're out of this bitch. I put in my resignation on the flight back and was like, I'm ready to roll. But I had been ready for about a year. I knew I was going to be fired or I was going to just leave like that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I would hate to have an employee like me, just to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's a common theme with entrepreneurs. Like you have to be tenacious to be successful as an entrepreneur. And you also have to be smart enough in some way, shape, or form, whether it's book smarts or street smarts or both, to figure out a way to do something better, or else your business won't make it. I asked the question for a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons was that I had an abrupt departure.
Did you?
Yeah, from my last job. It was an interesting day because I went to work not thinking that it was going to end that day.
Right.
But it was like, there was no weekend trip or anything. It was like, walked into work that morning thinking I would depart within the next, 3 to 6 months because I was working on a couple of side projects too. One thing didn't turn into another. And I was basically railroaded by a couple of guys who saw me as a threat.
Yep.
And instead of like figuratively getting on my knees and taking the accusations that were made against me, I was basically like fingers up, like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's time. I think, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I knew the end was so near that I wanted ideally to go out on my own terms if I could for my own ego and self-preservation, but also I was ready to roll. So I don't know, sometimes that's the best, to be honest with you, right? You're like, what better time than the present, whatever that phrase is.
Yeah. But then you're building the airplane after you jump out of or the parachute after you jump out of the airplane.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I get that.
And that's where things get interesting.
Totally. But you were also a top performer at your prior company. And so was I. I never let go of the gas. I was like, no one's going to fire me because they have too much to lose. I was pulling in $8 million myself alone. I think when I left, they hired 3 or 4 people to replace me. So it's going to cost you more to let me go. Okay. And I knew that. And so that's why I just kept fucking with them a little bit mentally, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah. It was similar where I worked. I think they had this false belief that they could, same kind of thing, do at least the same as what I was doing with 1 or 2 or maybe 3 other people. But that person that they tried to replace me with didn't stay. The GM ended up getting fired or put somewhere else.
Yep.
It's interesting. And it reminds me of one of Elon Musk's answers to a question in some interview, I believe. There's something along the lines of, why did you start your first business? And he was like, because I couldn't get hired at the companies that I wanted to work for.
Yeah, I fully understand that. For me personally, there were all men on the executive team. And I was like, but the audience is women. Like, what is going on here? And I could feel myself getting pushed all the time. I was making, I think, more than some of the executive members too. So they tried to really push me out for a while, but no, sorry.
Yeah. So you are building your parachute on the way down. You have a few clients. And now you work with some pretty ultra high level.
Yes, we do.
I'm not going to say pretty. I'm going to say ultra high level clients. Could you give a couple of examples of clients that your favorite clients maybe?
Yeah. I mean, we work with a lot of hotels. Rosewood is a wonderful partner of ours. Kleinfeld Bridal has been a partner for a long time. Those are some like bigger names that I think people would know. But outside of that, we become very popular in this one space of hospitality and weddings and events. But I like to say that we understand a high net value audience. So a lot of our partners locally, McCatherine Law Firm is a huge partner of ours, but that doesn't fit that specific bill of what people know us to be. So that's what I'm saying. If you can speak to this very specific group of people, you can do that pretty much at every turn. And so, it's been a ride. It has been a ride.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, Rosewood is like the pinnacle of ultra luxury hotels here in Dallas. The mansion on Turtle Creek is a Rosewood property. One of my favorites, we don't drink as much anymore, but back when we used to drink more, we would go to their
The
bar.
Mansion Bar, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a vibe.
Yeah.
It's a vibe for sure.
Yeah.
But for your audience, the Ritz-Carlton has been a client of ours, JW Marriott. So there's lots of different hotels, and it's been brick by brick, just like for you. It's been brick by brick by brick. And then like sometimes those bricks break and then you have to rebuild them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. So we've got the foundation built for today.
Sure.
And we just touched on building that parachute on the way down a couple times. With all that being said, the tenacity necessary to do that, and we'll be jumping around a little bit, but let's rewind back now to, I know you went to George Mason University, Magna
cum laude, yeah.
Magna cum laude, so did real well in college. You look at where you are now, all these followers, a really successful company, all these wonderful clients, but, and I'm sure most people that are listening to this conversation are thinking, oh, this girl's probably grew up in a really nice, calm household, you know, before she went to college. And in reality, it was
terror, actually. Horrific. It was horrific. I think too, and I do want to give a little asterisk on my prior behavior and experience in the workforce prior to owning my own business. I think I'm a little less diabolical now and softer now because I've had to learn how to be softer and like have that balance of hard and soft to get people to not hate you and want to work with you. But that was like a learned behavior. I hardened really early on in my life because very early my parents got divorced at around 7 years old and my mom moved to Boston. We always had a very tumultuous relationship. My dad is a wonderful father and businessman, but also had a lot of women in and out of my life. So he's been married and engaged multiple times. And so there was just a lack of stability. With my mom, I decided a couple years after living with a horrible stepmother that maybe I could get down with living with my mom in Boston. And so I very abruptly in 7th grade.
Real quick. So mom was in Boston.
Yeah.
Was it DC that dad was in?
Dad was in DC.
Okay.
Yep. I made the choice also at 9 years old to live with my dad, which my kids are turning 9. And I'm like, that's a very big decision to make, right? And my reasoning, and I remember my dad telling me we were walking on the beach and he's like, your mom's moving to Boston and she's going whether you're coming or not. That was kind of the framework. And my whole life had been uprooted from their divorce. It was the sloppiest divorce possible. And we were very deep in the Greek community and church was also associated with that. And it was just like church fodder, honestly, which is kind of, I've had to reframe my whole space with faith because it was so sloppy and there was priests and it was a whole thing and very embarrassing to my family too. And so I just thought to myself, like, I don't want to have another big change in my life. So of course I'm going to stay here. And I was much closer to my dad than I had ever been with my mother. So to make that change, and I decided at 11 that I was moving in the middle of 7th grade, which is also emboldened me with this shit. Like, honestly, if my kid was like, I'm going to move tomorrow, I would be like, okay, let's talk it out. But they did. And what preceded that experience was some of the most horrific year and a half of my life. So my mom has Munchausen by proxy. And almost immediately, and I was reflecting on this with my former diaries at 11.
Real quick, can you tell what the definition of that?
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. So for those who don't know, it basically means that a parent will assign a syndrome, disease, cancer, whatever medical issue to your child. And you'll convince everybody this child is so severely ill. There was a movie that came out about it and now it's escaping me. But for me, my mom convinced doctors around her and me that I had bipolar disorder, even though I never had any symptoms. before, during, and after, but I was immediately I started treatment and medication for bipolar. And one thing that I can recognize now is my mom is a very ethnocentric person. So I only went to Greek doctors who she could meet with beforehand to frame this out, like who this person was who was about to come through the door. And so that wasn't safe. I was going to therapists, but no one felt safe because they didn't believe me, and you felt gaslit. I was gaslit constantly. And so from 7th to 8th grade, I was in and out of hospitals, in and out of treatment centers, in and out of institutions, being medicated for bipolar, and no one was helping me.
So when you say gaslit, were you at times wondering if maybe like this, I guess you could say facade or the opposite of a facade, like this false reality she had created was true? Were you like,
yeah. I mean, because if someone's like, you are crazy, you are so fucking crazy, and that is how it was with me and her, you're like, you want to see crazy? I'll show you. I can get a little crazy with you, but everyone can be a little bit crazy if they're pushed to a point and backed into a corner and physically abused and verbally assaulted. I mean, verbally assaulted and physically assaulted. I'm a kid, I was a kid with a very strong tongue that she couldn't control. And I think it just bred this like beast, frankly.
Wow. So that's wild. I mean, we did a pre-show strategy call, and as we discussed, I went through some similar things. So I can really, really relate. And when you have adults and including doctors that not only participate without, in a lot of professional fields, there's what are called fiduciary duties or laws, or both. I literally had to the level of doctors trying to do the same thing with the same disorder. And so when you are that young, I was a little bit older. I was more in early high school or junior high. As you said, verbal abuse, and then you had the physical abuse too. But it's wild. We think about the name of the show, No Surrender. It's a very lonely place to be. Like, someone can make you crazy. You don't necessarily have the knowledge necessary to confirm. And then you have these professionals that are not exercising their fiduciary duty to make sure that their patient, regardless of whether or not they're a minor, is being handled properly.
Correct. And I couldn't believe the overlap. If our stories were a Venn diagram, the amount of times that Venn diagram crossed over a little freaked me out, because it's such a specific experience. It's such a specific, and I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, frankly. And also, I think it's made me now more empathetic in a lot of ways. It took a while to get there. But as a kid, you're looking for safety. Parents are supposed to be your safety. And what kept happening to me was the same pattern on repeat. We would get into an argument. I wouldn't agree with something that she wanted me to do, say, wear, go to, like any teenager, by the way. And because I also need to star that, it wasn't abnormal things that I was asking to do. It was like, I want to go to the mall. It was really basic stuff. And it would become a thing. She would call her parents, her sister, her backup, and it would become everyone v. me argument. And then it would turn into just shitting all over my dad. He wasn't exactly faithful. And so her family would just try and just beat this into oblivion into my head, because for me as a kid, at 11, which no kid should really be having those conversations about adultery with your parents, but he was a great dad to me. So I looked at the person versus the action. I don't know how I was able to do that at 11, but I was. And I was like, but he's a great dad to me. And that the last big blowout was her sister pinning me down. She was reading court documents about what had transpired. I ended up in the hospital for several days, and I kept getting released because after they would do the psych evals, it was like, this kid is not meant to be here.
Yeah.
But during those times, you're exposed to things you shouldn't be exposed to. People trying to end their own lives. Believe me, I mean, there was like boys and girls in there with me that I was like really scared because I'm like, I don't know how I got here. I don't know how I got here. Period.
Yeah. So then there's another transition. Thank God.
Thank God. Yep.
So you go from that, which by the way, I can relate to that specific experience too. It's really wild when you get to the point where you're like certain that you're fine.
Yes.
Like all these people that are in there with you are literally crazy.
Actually, there are problems with those people. Yes. Yeah. So you're like, I can feel my finger. I'm here and I'm okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not hearing voices.
No.
I'm not
Nope.
suicidal.
Nope.
Never was. Not anytime in the recent past. I was not talking about slitting my wrists or anything like that. So you go from that extreme to how do you get away from that?
Well, every time I would end up in the hospital, I would call my dad, and he would come from DC to Boston to be around and to help get me out. And which is also very confusing. So as a kid, you're allowed to block, and I don't know if this was your shared experience as well, but I was able to block who I didn't want to visit me, which was the only power that I had. And I would block my entire family. I remember writing lists like mom, aunt, whatever. But it was my only protection to stay away from triggers, right? Like those people who were really trying to do me even worse. And finally, after being basically in and out of 8th grade, I think it was 2 weeks before high school started. And mind you, I was 12 at this time. I called my dad and I was like, I need to just come home. And the next day, that's where I was. And I remember literally packing trash bags of things. I didn't even care. I was just like, I need to leave here. And I read in my diaries recently that my mom said to me that she just didn't know how to control me and she hated me. And this was like the send off at Boston Logan Airport. And I just need to go. And I'm an only child. I also think maybe I should mention that I'm an only child. So that will mess with you. All you want naturally is to be loved by your parents. That is how we are wired. We want to be loved by our parents. We want that acceptance and that like attaboy or I love you no matter what. And I did not have that from half of me.
Wow. Yeah. So lots of conflicting stuff going on there.
Yeah.
Another example of something we have in common involving airports and like that same time where I was going through a bunch of stuff. I won't get into too much detail, but yeah, there's this breaking point. You end up at an airport and you don't know if you're ever going to talk to really important people ever again.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, so you're 12 years old. Or were you 12? Did you say 11 or 12?
I was 12.
You're 12.
Yeah.
You go back to dad's. You start high school early. So you're a freshman at 12 instead of 14 or 15.
Yeah. Let's say 14. Yep.
And you go from literal chaos, dealing with people who are literally insane in a psych ward, to how were the next couple years before you started college?
So I was on all of these medications, and lithium was one of those medications. And for those who don't know, it's very, very strong. You have to have your blood tested so that basically I don't remember if it's kidneys. It's kidneys. Yeah. Okay.
Another thing we have in common.
Right. Another unfortunate Venn diagram crossover, which I almost collapsed when you said that to me.
Yeah.
Because it's such a specific experience.
Yeah.
And so every other day you have to get your blood tested. And I was on a cocktail of sleeping medication because I was on uppers and downers and gained 60 or 70 pounds as a little kid. So I was 200 pounds. Which is really a great way to start high school in a new place too. So popular, not at all.
Right.
And
yeah.
I decided, well, I didn't decide. I found that every time I was taking the medication when I moved back to DC, I was gagging or throwing up. And I didn't tell anybody that, but I just decided to wean off of it. And after, I think it was a month or two, I told my dad, I was like, I'm no longer taking these medications and I've been totally fine. And he's like, I thought maybe, but holy shit, you should have told me so I could have helped you wean off and all of those things, because your body goes into withdrawal even if you don't need those medications. I want to also share with you, at that time, 2 months after I left, my mom had gotten engaged to a man who also, ironically, had a lot of mental health issues. Also, ironically, within a year after getting married to my mother, and by the way, I didn't go to their wedding. I made that choice. I was like, no. Ended up in a psych ward of all places and diagnosed for bipolar disorder.
Wow.
So I felt so vindicated once I figured out what was going on with her. And I figured that out, I think my sophomore year. I was like very deep into researching and understanding bipolar. I wanted to become obsessed with understanding, do I have this or do I not have this, right? I had never had an outburst, manic episode, definitely depressive episode because of the life that I was given. But I felt conflicted constantly because, to your point, I grew up in a very affluent life, like very privileged life. The outside, the most beautiful life you could possibly imagine. And inside the house was horrific, literally on fire. Everything was on fire. And so that is happening in the background. I lose the weight. We start to stabilize. I keep going in and out of wanting to make that connection with my mom, like therapy. I mean, just to caveat, I've clearly gone through a lot of therapy in order for me to speak so topically and unemotionally. It's like almost completely detached from my lived experience. I have to speak about it like that because it's too painful otherwise. And I'm sure you can appreciate that too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. You're like, yeah, I also took, these things are horrific. Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I had to use I would chew gum and stick it to the roof of my mouth and then push the pills to the gum.
That too.
Yeah. And little did they know I was totally fine without the stuff they were forcing me to take.
Your body knows, no matter your age, your body knows if you are in a state of, I don't even know what state that would be called.
Well, I mean, you touched on the depression too, which that bipolar and depression are obviously related because that's part of the bipolar.
Sure.
For anyone who doesn't know, bipolar is manic depressive, right? Depressive, you're way down below normal. Mania is similar to schizophrenia.
Correct.
People who are truly manic are bipolar without being induced, because that's another thing. A lot of people who are labeled as bipolar are only bipolar because of something that not you can have a psychotic break without any medications or anything like that. But a lot of people become bipolar because they go through something that makes them very depressed.
Yes.
And then they shoot right through the roof when they're given an antidepressant.
Yep.
With that being said, the true mania, if your mania is induced by medication, you're not, by the book definition, bipolar.
Yeah, I think that's called bipolar 2, if memory serves me correctly. I think bipolar 1 is what you previously just expressed. I think that is bipolar 2. So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's almost like there needs to be laws where, especially when children are involved, because if you label someone as bipolar, most psychiatrists will tell you that if you're bipolar, you're going to have to live the rest of your life on something like lithium or Depakote, very similar mood stabilizers. And as a result, your kidneys could fail. Other really bad things can happen. I get the chills thinking about it because
I am too, because I'm like, yep.
As a child, as someone who's not even 18 yet, you're being told these things that you're never going to be normal. You're never going to, in the mood stabilizers, they're not just stabilizing you or keeping you from going through the roof if you've never been through the roof.
Exactly.
They're also often not effective at keeping you from being depressed.
Correct. You're just at a 0. You're just
in general, for everything.
Correct. You're neither high nor low. You're literally nothing, no personality.
Which means, which means you're not happy.
Of course. And I was so young. I don't know how I figured that out, but I just knew that inside voice, you're like, is this what this is like? Is this really my life? I certainly had those questions that I would ask myself because I'm like, do other people experience this level of drama and trauma every single day of their lives? Like, why is my home not safe for me? It shouldn't be like that, right?
Right.
And so leading into the next phase of life, which was still in high school, kind of the latter part of high school, my stepmom really didn't want me present, period. And to move back and her kids would go back and forth. I was the kid who was constantly there. She really didn't love that for her life. And so I was always in trouble. My dad was doing a lot of traveling. They also worked together. So he was doing a lot of his traveling. She was doing the majority of the parenting, which is never a good situation. All right.
Yeah.
And so I was grounded almost all of sophomore and junior year of high school. And it wasn't until my 16th birthday that I feel like my dad actually heard me. And she was also an alcoholic. I don't drink because of her, honestly. So in some ways, I guess I'm grateful for that. But I had never seen or understood like, oh, when you drink, sometimes people get out of control. I had never seen that live until my 16th birthday when she had an argument with my dad over me. I could hear them. And my dad would recluse to our front porch and she came charging after me. I must have mouthed off to her or something. And she came charging after me. And I remember locking myself in my bathroom. Ironically, I was on the phone with my mom, which is weird. I just reread that recently. And I was like, oh, I don't remember that, but okay. And
reread it in your journal?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Because I needed to remember that this happened recently. I needed to confirm I wasn't losing it when I recently told my audience that this had happened to me. She comes trying to attack me, so I locked all of the doors, and until I heard her quiet down, I snuck out the back stairwell. We had a front and back stairwell. And was trying to explain to my dad. I went rushing out to him and like, this just happened, and just explaining as quickly as possible. And she was like, you better tell her to shut the fuck up. And he had this fire pit because he was smoking cigars out there in the middle of November. And she was like, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. And she pushed me and he just caught me right in time. And it was the first time, I will never forget, he was calming her down and he's like, there's irreparable damage that you're about to do to us. There had been irreparable damage going on and they should have been divorced long before that. But unfortunately, it took that to be heard for the first time. And so again, what I've unfortunately realized lately, and this is no hate to my dad because I am close with him, or repairing with him, which is a whole other conversation. But I had no safety as a kid, like, period. I had no childhood, period. And now having my own children, I'm like, you are safe and you are loved. And if something happens, we as a family are going to stand behind you and no one's going to harm you. I did not have that. And I don't think you had that either.
It was definitely. And I like to make it a point now to state that it's hard to be a parent, I'm sure. I'm not one other than our 4 fur babies. But that's not at all like having
people talk back to you.
Yeah. And it's the responsibility to raise children is enormous. At least to me it is. There's a lot of people out there who shouldn't even have kids that do, and 100%. That's why a lot of the problems that exist in society are there is because we have a lot of people running around who are still children up here. So yeah, another thing that we have in common is that, yes, my parents divorced when I was really young too. We dealt with things in our family that were similar in some ways to what you've described. My dad worked a ton, but he had to, right? Just like you said with your dad, like I still love my dad. I'm still close to my dad. No one's perfect, but yeah, like.
You're like, but did you have to go here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, no one's perfect. But did we have to be so extreme in our childhood?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and it's wild because looking back on it and you see, the childhood that you're providing for your children. And then for me, when I look at stuff like that type of childhood and then I compare it to kids I was growing up with and in like that atmosphere they were raised in. And again, nothing against my parents, right? Because the past is the past.
Sure.
It's water under the bridge.
Sure.
But then you don't usually produce entrepreneurs. Like
Yeah.
in order to be an entrepreneur that makes it more than 5 years is hard enough. You have to have, in most cases, unless you're like a freaking wonder child, unicorn producing super genius, the whole no surrender theme, what didn't kill you made you stronger.
Yes.
And that's wild. Like one of the quotes I say a lot is God wouldn't put you through anything he didn't know you could handle.
Isn't that hard to stomach though? You said that to me the other day and I was like, yeah, but also like, why, man, why? I try not to dwell there, but right now I wanted to bring this little nugget to you today because I was having a conversation with my son yesterday. Today is their last day of second grade. And I've said, what last night? I said, like, what is the best thing that's ever happened to you? And I have twins. One of them was like, just being here. I don't want to grow up. I just want to redo my life all over again. And I'm like, at almost 9, I could never have said that. And I was like, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to you? And he paused for about a minute. And I was like, it's okay to be open, He's like, well, everything has been really fixable. It's really solvable. And I was like, again, things that I juxtaposing my childhood, and you can't help but do that as a parent sometimes, like internal monologue, I'm like, it didn't have to be so insane in order to get the same level of tenacity in my mind, like, let's be honest, right? We could have gone through a hell of a whole lot less and still ended up being great entrepreneurs.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm not definitely not excusing it or downplaying it.
Totally.
Or anything like that. And it's, as you mentioned in a couple of different ways, like you have a mouthpiece, or at least did. I'm guessing it's probably still in there. Yeah.
There.
Yeah. And we touched on your college education and how you graduated at a pretty damn good university. We have that in common too. So needless to say, I have a mouthpiece too, right?
Like for sure.
Anyone when they're mad can have a mouthpiece, So, and it takes 2 to tango, right? So it's always like you were born with your genetics and then there's nature versus nurture. Where we kind of diverged in our childhood is I got into partying when I was pretty young. And for me, it was always like when they look at addiction, alcoholism, that kind of stuff, and they teach about it. For a while, I thought I might become a psychiatrist or a psychologist because I genuinely wanted to help people. But the more I learned about people in those classes, the more I learned that people are not going to change unless they decide they're going to change and they stick with it.
Correct.
And so it's like when you're going down this path and either because you're in counseling or you're in a institution, a hospital, however you want to say it, you're being told, like we've already touched on, you're being gaslighted basically. And you're like starting to wonder, am I?
To yourself, if everyone's telling you are crazy, you have to be like, maybe I don't know, right?
Yeah. So then you have these like things that happen, these traumatic events, these breakups, these divorces, when your brain isn't even close to being fully developed. And in my case, it was never a thought of, like, as they say with a lot of people who use drugs or alcohol or other things to escape. To me, it was never like, I need to escape. It was like, I want to have fun.
Right.
It's interesting because like when those things happen to children, the statistics show that the odds are way higher that they're going to have a stronger mouthpiece. They're going to engage in drug and alcohol use, all this stuff. So it's like this weird, like combination of events that shapes
a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is weird. That's where our paths go in different directions. I think part of that too, though, is that once my dad got divorced for the second time and we were kind of like roommates, it was fun, to be honest with you, at that point, once we broke free from all of these very horrific, toxic experiences. And my junior and senior year, I just wanted him to be proud of me and make myself proud. And so part of it, I think, was like fear of failure because he came to this country at 18 years old as an immigrant. I'm like, well, if this man succeeded and my cards are already stacked, and I didn't analyze things the way that I do today, but at the time I was like affluence, like experience, private schools, all these things that he absolutely didn't have. I'm not going to blow it. And I just had no real interest. I had fun in college, but I also am such a control freak. I do not like losing control. And my dad also never got obliterated, and he always says he's never gotten drunk before. I think that's bullshit. But I was like, it was like a fear of him figuring out that I was high on something or disappointment, and don't get me wrong, he picked me up from different parties at times, and we had a very open dynamic so that I felt comfortable coming to him and not fearful. But inside I was like, I don't know. I don't like this for me. I have a goal. I knew I wanted to own a business. I didn't know what the hell that meant. Surely didn't know what that meant, but that was what was modeled for me. And so I was like, I'm going to make as much money as I can possibly make. And I've always been like that. So to me, drugs and alcohol just kind of was like a divergence of that.
Yeah, that's how the stepmom was a blessing for you.
Absolutely. No, honest to God, yes. Yes. I'm no longer in touch with my former step siblings on that side. I have new sisters now. But I was stalking my former stepsister the other day, and I saw that she has an AA little coin. And I was like, see, the apple does not fall far. And it made me gave me a heart pain.
Yeah.
Because I was like,
Yeah, it's definitely a disease.
Yeah, of course.
Like, I like to say that all characteristics that can be applied to humans, like everyone falls somewhere between the first percentile and the 99th percentile. And some people have that first drink and they're an alcoholic for life.
Right.
And I'd put them in the 99th percentile of alcoholism.
Totally.
The same thing for you pick a drug. Like some people, even if it's just nicotine or caffeine, a lot of people don't like to admit that caffeine's a drug, but it's definitely a drug.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's another, like back to the nature versus nurture thing. It's like this interesting, everyone at birth has their genetics, like I said, and then like your nurture is going to affect when you're exposed to these things.
Right.
And yeah, it's always sad to see family members who end up so similar to parents.
Totally. Totally. To that end, I have identical twin boys, and they have the same two parents living the same exact lived experience, which usually people will say like, well, if you have an older sibling or younger sibling, like the parents aren't the same, you don't get them at the same. And they're so incredibly different, but there is some overlap there. And so with all other things controlled, right? Especially in a loving surrounding, in a safe space, like you can actually get a pretty great outcome. Turns out no significant trauma, great outcome. Lots of trauma, somehow like you get knocked in the head, but great outcome. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And unfortunately, circling back to statistics, the odds are way better in the household that you've created, right?
Yes.
I've got Andrea, my wife, in the studio today. We've got our producer here in the studio today. And I think she mentioned, it might have been a comment from you. I think it was, it was like a miracle or a Christmas miracle that I was still standing or something like that.
I said that you are a Christmas miracle, that you are still standing and haven't gotten knocked down somehow. And yeah, I'm like, this man has experienced a lot of things that most people, it would take you out. And you're like, what? You're like that blow up doll at the car dealership that like keeps coming up. And it's like, that's a very specific type of wiring. Right. And deliberate choices. Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think we're on episode 14 or 15 there. And throughout these episodes, we've had guests like you, right? We want people to learn from the people who have been through extremely difficult stuff and who have come out on the other side, because through those stories, people can learn. So you are in high school. When did you lose the weight? Just out of curiosity.
Sophomore year of high school. So it took a full year of my body to rid itself of the chemicals, frankly. And then I guess it was actually going into sophomore year, I lost 80 pounds.
And how did you do that?
Dieting and exercising.
Nice. It's logical, but on the other hand, it's so many people have such a difficult time losing weight. It's not easy.
No, it takes vigilance and consistency. And especially at that point, I was 12 or 13 years old. So to get on an elliptical when none of your friends have to do that. Like, I wasn't exactly doing things that other people around me were doing. I also, shockingly, not exactly an athletic person. So that wasn't going to be my outlet. So I needed to figure that out in order to also figure myself out at the same time.
So you lose the weight, you're back with dad, you're off the meds. Is it safe to assume you start kicking ass and taking names in school?
Yes. So I was diagnosed with ADD my sophomore year of high school. And that's actually when things started to really turn around for me, because I had always felt very stuck in that I wanted so badly to finish a project or to sit down at the piano. I just felt like I couldn't. I physically couldn't do it. And after that, everything changed, honestly. Once I got medicated and diagnosed for the right thing, everything changed and my grades totally shifted. And then same thing in college. Once you've felt a drop of whatever success means to you, and at the time it was grades and achievement in that regard, it's really hard to get off the wagon of that, right? And now as an adult and owning your own business, it's money. You're like, when you get that hit, there is nothing. We were talking about that the other day. There's nothing that tastes better than profitability, honestly, right? Like nothing.
Yeah.
So
profitability and switching back from, and we'll touch on this here in a minute, but switching back from, like, again, it'll all make sense in a few minutes, because we're going to touch on something you've been through or things you've been through with your business. But like, when you go from 0 to 209,000 followers, or you go from zero, in my case, zero business, starting out in a tiny little construction trailer, the absolute cheapest way to get a dealer license, to 8 expansions in 8 years and doing 8 figures in top line, and over $1 million a month, all these things. And you do it without any anomalies, like extreme anomalies, like COVID.
Right.
And then COVID hit, and all of a sudden I went from being this super ultra conservative, hole in the wall places where we would operate, but with a badass, like the goal was to build the badass team.
Of course.
And for years, I had the team on my shoulders, and I just kept walking, you know, because they were coming and going, hundreds of them. And so you know what you're capable of. And then something like COVID happens, and then the aftershocks and the free money that was given out. And then what are businesses going to do? They're going to take the money, right? They're going to grow, you know? And so, like, when the shit hits the fan, and you're in a position of, do I give up now because that free money stopped and we expanded at the wrong time? Or do I keep marching? As you know, stopping marching was never an option.
No.
You're not going to stop marching until you have no blood left in your body.
That's the thing. Unless you get back to zero, and even then, I'm not convinced that you or I would stop. It would be, we had no blood left in our body. That would be the stop. You know that you're capable of something extraordinary, that not everyone has the gumption or the capability or the know-how or the delusional belief in oneself to even have tasted that once in your lifetime, let alone multiple times. It does something to us. That's my addiction, honestly.
I guess I'll put it like this. I've had a couple of, not just people, but coach type people say, maybe you were an anomaly. Maybe you got lucky. I'm like, no, you don't tell someone they got lucky if 7 out of the 8 expansions occurred before the free money was given out.
Right. That to you?
Yeah, it was along those lines. Maybe you'll never get back to that level. And maybe we should consider the fact that you're not going to get back to that level. And I'm like, thinking to myself, you're fucking fired in my mind. Like, absolutely. I'm not going to say that usually directly to a coach.
Right, see, that's the difference between me and you. I would say you're fucking fired. I'm like, not the energy that I'm looking for.
Yeah, I'm sure in like, in some circumstances I would. I like have been through situations where I have, had to publicly fire people in front of other people and stuff like that. But you're supposed to be my coach and you're telling me that maybe I'm an anomaly. And you do you not remember all of the conversations we had before? So anyway, yeah, it's definitely a wild ride when you get to the point where you have really important people or people who are supposed to be really important doing the opposite of what they should be doing. Even if you're a coach, like if I were to be coaching someone who was in a similar position, there is the fact that things happen during the free money periods that were anomalies. There are a lot, millions probably of businesses that have gone out of business because they did the exact same thing that we did when the free money was going out.
Sure.
Big multi-million-dollar expansions and this and that. Yeah. So that's a fact. There were a lot of anomalies. On the other hand, they say that two of the worst things to do to people are to take away their hope or unnecessarily increase in uncertainty.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah. Those two topics have been in multiple books that I've read. So as a coach, even if you think maybe your client was an anomaly, how do you figure out a way to help them get to not be one?
Right. But I look at an anomaly as a good thing.
Right. Like that's where I was going.
I'm like, I'm sorry. I think this is great because you are paving your own path or you're one of one in a set of circumstances.
It's temporarily an anomaly.
Sure.
But it's not an anomaly anymore when you surpass it.
Right.
Right. So how do we get from here to here?
The
when
sustainability. Exactly. It's not just a one-time experience. You are showing repetition of that experience. Yeah, man. Oh my God. That person would have been fired instantly for me because I'm very sensitive to language now. I've learned this about myself, especially after some things that I'm sure we'll touch on that happened to my business. I'm not good at all and don't tolerate when people talk negatively about money around me. There's going to be a runoff period or there's going to be like, shit's going to hit the fan. You can say something directly without the emotion, the extra words that are honestly negative. Money is energy. We don't need to assign any negative energy to money, period. And so I'm so sensitive to language and how people speak about it, up and down, by the way. So going back to the anomaly, us too, we were one of one. We were the first ones to do this in this specific industry. The ride was like fast and aggressive and ferocious, as was the down and then back up again, right? So I don't know if you can go up and down again and again and again, especially when people are punching you down in whatever ways, employees, clients, government, etc. Like that, man, that doesn't make you an anomaly anymore. That just makes you great in my mind.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. And that was a perfect, like what you just mentioned, is perfect like interlude into, so you get the ADHD or just ADD? ADD.
Yeah.
So you get that figured out, end up in college, kill it in college, kind of back to where we started, but now we have context.
Yep.
Right?
I love how you just did that. and back at it again. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So now we have everything, the picture's pretty much painted, but then around the same time, so you go from a few clients to at your peak, how many, and maybe you have more clients, because I know you same thing, exponential growth. And then wasn't it around 22, 21, 22, 23, something in there?
23.
23
was my biggest revenue year and my biggest loss year as well. I made not one single additional dollar in 23.
And just for context, that was about how many clients?
I don't know how many clients.
Or how many employees?
I had 80 to 85 employees.
Oh.
Most of them were full-time or full-time contractors. We were doing $5.8 million. No overhead other than employees, really, right? Should have had a fuck ton of profit. And I think that we probably had 80. I think we had about 80 clients at the time because my problem was I didn't know how to scale this properly. I always like to say I was 30 years old when I started my business, like really 30 or 31. And every time we brought in a client, I felt like I needed to hire. But I was hiring so poorly. emotionally driven. It was just
even out of desperation, I'm sure, because you
very
have to, like, you have to get the work done.
Yes. And I haven't shared this with you, but there were times where I was like, well, mothers are great at doing things, so let's only hire mothers. I mean, I would just go on these roller coasters, and my poor team, a lot of them are still with me. A lot of them are not, but my core team is almost the exact same people. So we were able to shake it out. But in 23, we were overspending on employees massively. And was it in 24? Was 24 an election year?
Yes.
Okay. That was my first election year. And I didn't know that people spend less. And maybe, I don't know, you should tighten your team during that time or make it a little more fluid, more contract. I was carrying a humongous amount of overhead. And my two biggest clients, one of which was spending $650,000 a year with us. The other one was spending, let's call it $400,000 a year with us, decided to cut their own costs and bring everything in-house. And we kept the same team. We didn't cut anything. And I was misguided massively on a finance perspective. I didn't have really much insight at all, which is, again, where I'm like, I try to give myself grace on I am young and learning and will never make the same mistake twice. But we found ourselves in the hottest water ever.
Yeah, and I can relate there too, because as the CEO, they say that the two most important things a CEO can do are, number one, make sure that at least core team is there. So it's incredibly infuriating when you can't even, in my case, in my industry, it's like drugs, alcohol, all sorts of, I hate to say it, but in some ways it's a catch-all for a lot of people who didn't make it in other industries for whatever reason. And
yeah, I
like
can imagine. Yeah.
and like I said earlier, like hundreds of people have come and gone over the years. Just technicians, mechanical and collision technicians alone, hundreds of them have come and gone. So when you can't even build that core team, again, you have to. If you can't do that as the CEO, you need to fire yourself. Basically. And that sucks because you're responsible.
Yeah.
And then number two, you need to make sure that that team that you build, regardless of whether or not you have the best configuration in the team put together yet or not, number two is you need to make sure they have all the leads, all of the good customers they could possibly need to work with in order to ensure that top line continues to grow.
Totally.
And if you have to stay up 20 out of every 24 hours in a day for 5 years in a row to do that, you either do it or your company dies.
The end.
Yeah.
The end. Yes.
And to kind of like follow up on what you said, you're in this position. I'm not, and I've been in the same position. I'm not trying to justify it or excuse it, but I'm just, for the people that watch or listen to this, like, just know that like, they might be sitting there trying to judge you for, oh, how could she not like, how could that be that she had $5.8 million in top line, almost no overhead, and be losing a record amount of money?
Yep.
And the answer is because if you don't do objectives 1 and 2, there is no company.
Correct.
And then like, in my case, I hired 7 different controller type people in a row who failed, right? So like even that multi-million-dollar expansion that I mentioned a little while ago, the data I was given to make that decision was wrong.
Oh, that just like, I understand that on a soul level. I understand that on a soul level, because if you are blind with your money, on purpose or not, right? And in both of our cases, not on purpose, bad information, making what you think are good decisions are, I don't feel like people talk about that enough, right? I don't think people talk about it enough that you have to be checking everyone's work all of the time, including your controllers, all of the time.
Yeah.
Like you are editing all of the time, period.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Editing, whether it's in your case, like could be like physically editing the content that your clients use, or you're editing your team, or you're editing your strategy.
Always.
Like you're the quarterback out on the field, and you think you have this offensive coordinator, or defensive coordinator, whatever you want to call it, general manager who's managing that money correctly, or at least at the bare bones minimum, making sure they're not presenting information to you that might lead you to make a multi-million-dollar mistake that could lead to you losing everything and everyone on your team losing their jobs.
Oh, right. Which is exactly what happened, basically. It wasn't. So I work with my husband, as you mentioned earlier, and he is not as aggressive of a personality as I am. However, when he has questions and he will keep harping on something until he finds the answer. And in this case, we were given a P&L that was very incomplete, but I also didn't know what was or wasn't complete. This is my first time running a business. I didn't know that it was too, the categories were like condensed too much. So I couldn't actually see where the bleed was and understand how much I needed to cut. That kept being the question. How much do I need to cut? Where do I need to slim down, right? I'm trying to help myself and I'm not getting enough answers. And Eddie kept poking at, I think it's this. I think it's this. I think we need to have cut a bunch of people when we lost these 2 big clients. And I would go back to my CFO at the time and be like, is that true? Do you think we need to cut because we lost those clients? And he's like, no, you guys are fine. You guys are fine. Okay, if we're fine, we're fine. He knows. Who are we? Who are we? Right?
Yeah. So then that brings me to this like milestone in my mind that I'll never forget. And the question was, then where the fuck is my money?
Where the fuck is my money? That, if you have to utter that from your mouth, where the fuck is my money? First of all, I pray no one has to, but we have, you and I have. Yeah. But where did it go? And then you're trying to run backwards as fast as you can, right? I will never forget, I think it was last March, February or March, I had an accounting team that I was paying for running parallel with my CFO that I didn't know about, who was desperately trying to help us. And my core team got in touch so that we could actually reverse engineer what was happening here and go line item by line item. Do we need this $100 extra expense? No, cut it. Shut everything off. Let's go down to the sticks, basically. The skeleton, right? The skeleton team, as you know, and restructure and build it right this time, because we didn't have systems and processes in place so that once it came back, it would be built right. And it was very traumatic and messy and hurtful. And I trusted so deeply that I ended up signing my name to $500,000 worth of loans that I didn't know what I was signing. I just had blind trust and faith. We're almost done. We're almost done with those loans in August.
Nice.
Every day I look, I'm like, okay, I know the date. It's August 11th. I know the date, but I'm like, okay, so June, July, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So we're almost there. And we had our first profitable month this past February. Nothing will make you question yourself more than, how did I get here? How could I do this to myself, to my family, to the only person? At the end of the day, you trust lots of people, you hire lots of people, you have good intention. And I know you come from a place of, I want to have good faith in this person, that they're not going to be a dirtbag, that they're, in my situation, it was family, it was very close friends, stabbing, taking, mismanaging all over the place. And so even in those settings, you still have to question and edit, even in uncomfortable circumstances, because you cannot be left with that feeling of holding the bag ever again. I will never let myself feel that again, period.
Right.
I'd rather have one client forever than feel that again.
Yeah. As I mentioned, 7 failures in just that position alone. And when you're running that kind of money, in my case, over $1 million a month
insane.
In, and most of it going out, like even in my industry, when you're like a full spectrum dealership with a collision center too, you're very lucky if your net is 6% of your top line.
Right.
So then you have literally 30, 40, 50 grand a day coming and going every day.
Yep.
And it's a lot to keep track of.
Oh yeah.
You know, so all you have to be off by is 7% to lose money. And when you're dealing with that much money coming and going, if you're losing money, you're not usually losing hundreds of dollars. You're losing
hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah. In my case, I took all that commission that I made at Wedding Wire so that I didn't have to ask for an investor. We self-funded and we invested $1 million into our company. And now over the past 2 years, tracking it back is so messy and so painful to be like, but I trusted you. I trusted you.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the only thing. We've talked about Munchausen by proxy. Nothing will bring me to my knees, and I'm sure you can feel this, than someone taking your money.
Yeah, like that especially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One of my favorite books is Extreme Ownership. It's by Jocko Willink, Navy SEAL, one of the best-selling business books ever, probably.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, the thesis of the book is that as the CEO or the manager of a department, however high up you go in the hierarchy, you're responsible for everything that's done correctly and incorrectly at every level below you. Technically, you trusted that person to do that. It was your decision on the one hand. On the other hand, they did what they did.
Right. But like, it's still my fault. It's still my fault. It's still your fault.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier, like giving yourself grace. You know, that's what you have to do. On the one hand. On the other hand, that doesn't magically make your money reappear.
No. It allows you to look at yourself in the damn mirror and not go back to bed that day, you know, and like tap out.
Yeah.
You know, I always said to myself, there is no option but to be successful here because I have too much to lose. My husband is working with me. My kids depend on me. And honestly, at the end of the day, that's all I care about. Like, this has to work and be successful, period. And so to feel, and I don't think I've ever shared this publicly, but this was the first time I've ever failed at something. I try hard, I get good grades. I try hard, I get the job. I make enough calls, I get the money that I want. I'm trying hard and I can't move fast enough out of giving myself the money back to profitability, fixing this. I couldn't go fast enough and I stumbled and I fell down, all the way down. So I hadn't experienced failure. And I try not to say that very often because I'm like, and it's all part of the journey. But let's be so for real. That's what that was. So.
Well, it was to a degree, but the company's still standing.
Very much so. They're thriving, actually. Thank God. Thank God. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can relate. And yeah, to you, it's a failure. To me, it was a failure. Like it's, to me, as I mentioned, my wife's in here with us today. And like, I still have, I don't beat myself up, but like we're this month, you mentioned February, April, I don't have my finalized financials for April yet, but
I just looked at mine this morning.
Really?
Yes.
So, but they were still positive. I'm
Thank
assuming.
God, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think April, we might've done it this month. It would be crazy if we don't.
Oh, that makes me so happy for you.
Thank you.
That makes me so happy for you.
But
yes,
with all that being said, it's, as far as beating myself up goes, like, as I think I said earlier, if not, I've said it many other times in many other places, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Totally.
Especially in business.
Totally. Yes.
Right. It's, even though we'll be back to profitability, we will not be back to the top line revenue that we were at.
Sure.
And it's a stock, you know, like a good stock is going to have its peaks and valleys as it continues to rise. Once you back into the black, you have to make sure, especially when considering gas, like premium fuel. I filled up the other day, it's $5 a gallon. That's not good for the car business.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But yeah, it's kind of hard to not use the word failure or beat yourself up because you've lost a shit ton of money that you have to get back. A lot of people don't know this, but at one point, President Trump was worth negative $900 million.
I read that. I love that.
He was like in some interview with a reporter and he was like, you see that homeless guy over there? He's worth more than I am. And the reporter's, what? Yeah, he's like, I'm worth negative $900 million right now. We're talking about millions, a couple million.
Right.
900
just give me
million.
Full body chills.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Like, we think it's bad to be out $1 million or $2 or $3, whatever.
Sure.
900 million.
I mean, and yet it's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible. I think in your situation, you're going to move differently moving forward, right? I firmly believe that it will get back to a place where it was the same and better, right? But everything inside your house will be different and smarter and sharper so that you have the foresight to see when the tsunami is coming. And I'm like, at least I know that there's still demand, right? So I always tell myself that. I'm like, what if we were like 35 years in and the demand wasn't there? We were in a different place. And like, I'm young, my husband's young, our business is flourishing. We have a stable system. We have systems in place for great output. What if those situations weren't there? So now when there's an election year or people are scared, I know how to move. I'm shape-shifting much faster than I ever was, much faster, and trying to secure revenue in different ways and pivot better, faster, stronger than anyone else all the time, which is exhausting, obviously.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's the only way.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, I'm never going to feel that. I don't ever want to feel that again.
Right. Yeah. It's the whole adapt, improvise, overcome from the Marines. And that's kind of to come full circle on a lot of the things we've touched on with the no surrender mentality.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, it sucks to go through what you go through on the one hand. On the other hand, there's no replacement for experience.
Totally. Oddly, I don't know if you feel this way, but oddly, I wouldn't change anything in any part of my life. Yes, would I love a better childhood? Yes, but it creates grit. And so it's very hard to knock you and I down. It's actually impossible. It's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, as long as there's blood, as long as we can physically move, we're going to keep trying to move.
Period.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. And so you have to give yourself grace and allow yourself the time to learn what the learning is when that stuff is happening, right?
Yeah. 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 That's the most, you journal. Do you still journal?
Every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is critical. The main thing in life and entrepreneurship is hopefully not learn the same lessons over and over, because that's literally the definition of insanity.
Exactly.
You know, or
yeah.
to do the same things and expect different results, you know, basically the same thing.
Totally.
So yeah, it's an interesting ride, whether it's life or entrepreneurship.
Or both.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Well, it's amazing how the time has flown by here.
I know. Thank you so much for hanging out and letting me hang out with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I always end with the opportunity, if you're interested, if people want to reach out to you, is the best way for them. You said, Persephone says, that's your Instagram. Should they just DM you, or do you prefer any other?
Definitely. Or contact us through the mediasocialites.com. And I'm always looking at all of the inquiries, of course. So that's definitely probably the best way.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Maybe we'll do another episode.
Let's do it. You need to come on mine now.
Okay.
Yeah, you need to come on mine.
I'm down.
Awesome.
Let's
Thank
do
you,
it.
Justin.
You're welcome. Thank you.